Welcome. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Well, it's good to be here with you guys. Of course, you guys know we're here on talking about a very serious subject. What happened back on February the 14th in Parkland, Florida. And thank you for your time. We had students discuss this a couple of days ago. We want to get their viewpoint, and so we did. I think we say the best for last, which is you guys. And so thanks for giving us your time. Name and what church you're from.
Rodney Pierre, Discover Life Church.
Cool.
Jay Watts, LTI Life Training Institute.
I'm Chase Grindstaff at Grayson United Methodist.
Cool.
Manny Marty at Mountain West Church.
Served 2 years in Naples.
Yes, sir.
Tom Conley, Berean Christian Church, Stone Mountain, Georgia.
I've been there before, a couple times.
Kerwin?
Yes, I know one of your staff guys too. Derek Somerville.
Yes, sir.
Rodney
Mason.
Yeah, tell Rodney said hello.
Todd Jones, First Baptist Duluth. Josh Frazier, Greystone Church.
Josh, good to see you again.
And Dennis Rivera, the Bridge Church.
Gotcha. All right. We'll go right into the first question, guys. It's the side question here. Students organizing the march have identified 3 main goals they are hoping to accomplish. The first one, guys, is this: banning assault weapons. Second one is requiring universal background checks before gun sales. The third one is passing a gun violence restraining order. Here's the question for you guys. Do you think the goals outlined would change things for our country? Who wants to tackle that one first? Jay, do you mind tackling that one for us?
Oh, that's fine. Number one, I think you have a definition problem. I mean, I think it's difficult to define what you mean by assault weapon, especially in the popular culture, the way it's used. So I think that one's going to be difficult. I think universal background checks is actually going to happen. The third one, I think, is a dangerous one as well, in the sense that it depends. DC versus Heller in 2008, the Supreme Court said those kind of things are okay, but they have to have clear guidelines.
Yeah.
And so the danger, anytime you give the government or any group the ability to define somebody's rights away, you have to have very clear parameters. So I think that one will be tough as well. In the end, I don't know that will have the impact they're hoping it'll have overall, because I don't see gun violence as only about guns. I think that obviously the world that we live in, the culture that we live in, has a problem of where they're grounding the morality and how they understand good and community and value of human life and how to treat people who are different than you, and all of these things are playing into it. So I think that it could make some impact, but I don't think it will have the impact they're hoping it would have.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I would say that I think it's more of a issue where we need to focus on mental illness, dealing with certain type of illnesses with people, and then also we need to focus more on maybe looking at a lot of different social media platforms. I think there's always, before something happens, there's always warning signs. And so because there's always warning signs, I don't know if we take those serious enough. And I think we should really look into those avenues first, and definitely look into mental illness.
That's a good point. Do you guys ever wonder who gave them these 3 points? Have you ever thought about that? Like, who are the people who, and I'm not downplaying our students, obviously, they are very, very bright individuals. Do you ever wonder how they come up with these 3?
I think a lot of it has to do with social media. The fact that they have access to just millions and millions of other people's perspectives and views, and even the video content. I think my biggest fear is not that they have access to that, but they're not taking the time to process what they're seeing and just regurgitating the information that is given to them.
Do you wonder if they were, and not to be political, do you wonder if they were manipulated to a certain degree? What if you're the church leader who's sitting in the pew, the typical church leader, who's thinking, how do they find these, first of all? Are they smart enough to know that these 3 things should be a part of it? And third, were they manipulated in coming up with these 3 points? Is that a fair observation from many of the people who sit in your pews every week? You think they're thinking that?
I think we already live in a politically charged environment. So I'm with you. I don't want to downgrade their access or the fact that they're processing this for themselves, but this is viral. This is what's hot and fresh. So it's probably fair to say that they are repeating talking points.
Yeah.
But for some of our students, they're very aware and very conscious of what they see the future being, what they hope for the future.
I thought it was interesting. Mine of the Wednesday, one of the young men they were part of the walkout and speaking in D.C. He kept calling gun violence a moral issue, and I think that's something that, you know, as we look at a lot of different moral issues in the church, is gun violence a moral issue? Because we're talking about life and death. But then we really have to turn around and look at other things that are life and death moral issues. And so we really need to speak into this as church speakers.
Good point. Anybody else?
I would echo. I love Jay's answer to this question. I think it's a very just complicated. There's a lot of definitions that have to go along. I think they're adding to the conversation. I think this is a conversation we all agree needs to happen, and it does happen. Sadly, whenever incidents happen like this, we have these heated conversations, and then a month, 2 months pass, and it kind of fizzles out, and then either A, which horrible as it sounds, another tragic event occurs, and then the conversation shifts, or B, we go back to life as normal. And I think the danger there is we become desensitized. So talking about mental health, talking about students in high school, there's and there's a book, Wonder, and the movie came out recently. It's about a boy and bullying and these very complex, deep topics that all are pertinent to this conversation about violence in schools, and just even the makeup in schools, and how children and students and adults, for that matter, how they handle situations, how they take on situations, and how they want to take matters into their own hands, whether that's activism or whether that's the atrocities that we just witnessed.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. Guys, next question is this. Let's go back to February the 14th, Valentine's Day. Where were you at? What were you thinking when you heard about the latest incident here in Parkland?
Yeah, when I first heard about it, I immediately thought kind of the worst case scenario. Kind of like we all kind of remember 9/11. I'll remember kind of those that gut wrenching, jaw dropping thing. I knew a lot of people who were in Florida who experienced it. A good friend. We have a mutual friend who is serving in a church who's pretty close to it. And man, it's gut wrenching. You think of friends, think of family, and obviously pray for them, and lift them up, reach out to them. And I think a lot of people think that it could be them, and a lot of parents think it could be their kids, and so it just becomes really fast.
Yeah. Rodney.
Yeah. I was at work when I got the news. I don't know how this sounds, but my first thought was, here we go again. I didn't know it was kids. I just heard that there was a mass shooting. So I'm desensitized to that for the most part. Okay, you kind of know that it's coming again, but I didn't think that it would be kids. And when I heard that it was kids, because I have a special place for young people, that hit me in a particular place. But I wasn't surprised. This issue that we have doesn't discriminate, and that's the sad part about this. And so, I think I had a little bit of shock because it was kids, but I was not shocked at all that the event happened.
Wow. Yeah. A lot of high school students have been saying over and over again that they feel like they're part of the mass shooting generation. Do you think that statement is true?
I think there's a bit of truth in that. Again, we're talking about the access to media, the fact that everything is cycling in front of them. I believe that they are way more informed than in previous generations. But it's scary to think that that's the thoughts that they're having at this day and age. Even as far as in this area, there's been 2 or 3 schools having situations similar. There was a middle school where a few boys were, I believe they had to be arrested because they were bringing a gun to school. Another school, I believe it was in your area, a high school, that they had to shut it down because there was threats. So it's scary. I believe every single one of us at least has a student or another who's had the conversation of, I don't feel safe in school. I don't feel safe going to school. And it's terrifying to think that. It's terrifying that our young people are having this thoughts and this feelings towards education. I mean, the land of the free, the home of the brave, yet we don't feel too brave going to get our education.
You guys had students who said that they don't feel safe going to school. Raise your hand if you've had students say that. Wow. What do you do with that?
Just remind them, sin is real, evil is real. There has been things like this happen throughout history. It's just now just like mass media, social media, and everything like that it's just bombarded. So just know that I kind of remind them that if guns were completely out, there'd still be evil. There'd still be something, it's tough.
And I would to add to that too, and this doesn't mean to sound, walking into school is dangerous. And one of my generations, I remember being in school when 9/11 happened. Before that, I'm in a plane and it's being flown into a building. This is, and I'm not trying to take away from the schools, because our students, our children go to these places. They trust the adults there. They trust to a degree their fellow students. They're going into these environments, and the last thing they want to think about is that I may not come home alive today. And as a parent, and I have a 2-year-old, but as a parent, that is, I had family who was like, I'm A, holding my child tighter today, and B, I don't know if I want to send them to school tomorrow. And that is a very horrible spot to be in, especially as a parent and as a youth leader or as a church leader.
Todd, are you concerned about the recent rise in gun violence?
The recent rise,
Yeah.
or stuff that has been going on for a while now.
Or either one. All right.
So, because I think we've discussed the media has taken a lot of it and has made it the forefront of a lot of issues. So, I think it gives the church, for me, it gives all of us a place where we can speak into this situation, because we just heard a lot of our students don't feel safe. Well, what if we made the church the safest place for any student to walk into? What if they can come and they can talk about the fears that they have? Give them the tools, give our students the tools to be able to talk to their friends that are experiencing this fear, because we know the one who brings peace in all situations. So I think it's one of those things where God's given us an opportunity to speak into our students and then allow them to go to their school campuses and speak about peace, speak about, they're thinking about mortality for the first time. A lot of these students are. They're fearing death. We give them, hey,
wow.
Jesus is the answer to this mortality. Yeah. And so it kind of gives them that opportunity to speak in. So we have to do a better job of discipling in this situation. So,
yeah. Everybody, you guys raising your hands on this one. Did you have any students who decided to walk out of school this past week? Hands raised. Okay, great. What did you tell them, if you don't mind me peering into your time with them and not mentioning names, obviously, on this one? When they came to you and asked you if they should, what advice did you give them?
I'll lean into that. We talked about it this week, that it's not just about the moment, that even though some movements have started from a singular act, but what's next? Yes, I want your voice to be heard, and I support you in that. I'm with you in that. But what's next? Who's the student that is the loner that you're going to? As Todd mentioned, there's no greater mission field than where they're at right now.
Yeah.
They'll have no greater captive audience to reach than where they're at right now. So what's next? If these issues matter to you, and I hope that they do, and I hope that there's change ahead, but what are the next steps? If this is the catalyst for the conversation, catalyst for change, then I'm with you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would add to that. So I told a few of them that I'm proud of them. I thought it was a great opportunity for them to speak truth to power and walk in that light that we encourage them to walk into. I think that this is a good opportunity for them just to be able to share their voice. And it kind of goes back to one of the questions that you had a little earlier, where we talked about, will these laws change? Will any of these laws change? Well, I think it has a lot to do with what he was just saying as far as the attention span of our young people. What happens after this? How long will we stay with this? Because I do feel that this is going to impact, because the youth are speaking. And when the youth are speaking, saying that I'm hurting, a lot of times we listen. A lot of times we listen. The question is how long are they going to say I'm hurting? Or are they just going to move to the next thing? If they stay here, if they understand that if I stay on this task, if I continue to push this agenda as young people and don't get too swayed and move to the next big thing, I think that we will see a difference. So with that, I think I told them that I'm proud of them. I think it's a great opportunity for us as leaders, teachers, staff, to be able to walk with them through this process. I don't want us to miss that.
If I can add to that, I think part of it is allowing our students to see the magnitude of this moment.
Yes.
Like like your voice carries weight,
Yes.
and if they can, like, if we don't take the time to at least educate that on that, they may miss the moment because they don't understand the magnitude of it.
Jay, you are a studier of history. And over the last 2 decades, unfortunately, we've had several of these incidences that have taken place. This one to some feels different. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, it's hard to disagree with. It feels different because feeling is how we're processing it. It's not to say that there was something about this that was particularly worse than Sandy Hook or Columbine or the things that we've seen before, but that there was something about what's going on right now that feels different. Clearly something is being processed differently by a group of people that have had enough. I do think, and listening, I agree with a lot of what's been said, but echoing some of what Rodney was just saying, I think what struck me the most of this moment is one of the things that I heard one of the students say when he said, parents, it's time for you to start acting like adults. I do think that there's a sense where they don't trust us any longer, where they don't feel like we're handling it.
Do you really?
I genuinely believe that. I think
Wow.
that's when you talk about what feels different. I think what I'm hearing them saying is not, and why they're gravitating towards these particular gun measures, I have very little interest in. But the way that they're speaking out about it at this moment, where they're saying it's time for somebody to do something, and they don't trust us to handle it any longer. And so, to me, that's what feels different. It feels as if there's a group of young people that have finally said, we don't feel like you're acting like adults. Now, that doesn't mean I totally agree with the way they're responding, but I see where it's coming from. Because in a lot of ways, look at the way we're having our public dialogue nowadays. We're not really acting like adults. We're not handling things in an adult way. We're not looking at, even discussing this issue, the idea of changing gun laws to the extent that some people want to do it would require changing the Second Amendment. That's an immensely huge undertaking.
Yeah.
It makes changing Roe v. Wade look very small. And we've been talking about that now for 45 years. And so with not seeing how big like you talked about, the immensity of what's going on right now and the seriousness with which it needs to be addressed. And that's how I sense it personally. I sense that you're starting to see a group of young people that aren't trusting the adults to handle things, and they're reaching out. And that's what you said. Do they feel differently now? Clearly, there's a different feeling right now. And that's what I'm most interested in addressing as somebody who works with young people. How can we help them process what's going on and get them into a productive direction with this and with their relationship with God?
Do you guys agree with that they do not trust adults?
I do. I think because from their perspective, if you look at it, what has always been safe for young people? Their home, their school, their place of faith. And so if you look at the situation now, all those places have become places now where they're worried. They're on edge. When I go to school, I'm worried about something may happen to me. I'm at home, I'm worried about something may happen to me. Even now, I'm going to church, I'm seeing things happening in the church now where people are even shooting up churches. So there's become a situation with young people where, okay, where's our security and safety going to come from? And I think now they're looking at each other to say, maybe we need to do this together. Maybe we need to band together, because what has been working in the past is not working anymore.
Do you guys, sorry.
No, and I think that's an excellent point. Whenever we look at, and I don't put full stock in it, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of the lower ones is safety. They need to feel safe before they even open up to the gospel. Or, even below that is food and hunger, just basic necessities. And as you work your way up and self-actualization, but we begin to see that in Christ Jesus. So you said security and safety, and a lot of that has to do with identity. Our kids have no idea who they are. Our adults have no idea who they are. And so it's easy. It's easy to see the correlation between these two. It's also easy to see that at homes, I'm a case of this. I've never met my dad. There was no dad at home. So there is a breaking down of the home, the marriage, even the way that their parents interact with one another. So then our children, our youth, they go towards one another, and there's issues between them or with teachers. So yes, it's easy for them to see adults and say, well, you guys don't have it together. How do you expect us to have it together? And even our whole society is so shallow with one another, where we can't even have deep conversations without, just blowing each other, just kind of blowing to the wayside whenever the next thing comes.
And that depth to the conversation is a big thing. Like I believe you said it earlier. We're not able to disagree and have an intelligent conversation. I love the way my pastor says it. We don't have to see eye to eye to walk hand in hand. Mm-hmm. It's okay to disagree. Yeah. It's okay, but even having an ear to hear their perspective and not just arguing yours. When you have this conversation, are you just waiting for that person to take a breath or pause so that you can interject your moment or your perspective, or are you really trying to hear what they're coming from? Because I may have not experienced the same things that this man next to me has experienced. Like I personally have experienced a loss because of gun violence. When I was in high school, my senior year, one of my best friends was murdered at the age of 19. So it hits deep for me. Now, my experience may be completely different from yours. My environment may be completely different from yours, which shifts our perspectives. We see things through the lens of the experiences that we've had. So it's having that conversation and say, okay, maybe my perspective is different from yours because I have not lived your life or walked in your shoes.
And I think that's the danger of what social media has brought on is we argue with a screen. We don't argue with someone face to face. I think that's the danger is, and we live in this all or nothing society. Either, this whole phrase, and you hear it in movies all the time, you hear it all the time, it's if you're not for me, you're against me. And that's not the truth. We live on these ends of all or nothing, and we don't live anywhere in between. And I think what you're saying is so right. We need to get face to face and have conversations with one another.
Yeah, to that end, I argue for a living, and I won't argue online. I have a rule that I will not argue online because when I go to a university, I go to a school, I go to a high school, I go to a church, I speak at a public place. If a person is standing in front of me, I've noticed that there are limits to how ugly they are willing to be because it's face to face. And when they start to get excited, I put my hands up and I say, look, I want a respectful conversation. If you're not capable of engaging that, you need to take a step back and then we'll re-engage when you feel like you've got yourself under control. Online, there is nothing
There's no boundaries.
There's no boundaries.
There's no boundaries.
They hit the nuclear button immediately. They come in with Nazi, racist, everything, like right out of the gates, and there's just nowhere to go.
Then they have emojis to explain it.
Yeah, you find out they're 12 years old.
Has anybody ever hit the nuclear button? No, I haven't. So, Jen, that's just questions as you argue for a living here and for the cause of the right of life, basically, man. What do you say to people? I've heard this over and over again in church life. Hey, they're walking out for gun violence. Why will they not walk out for pro-life issues? Why will they not walk out for abortion issues?
I think you hit it on the head a second ago, and it's been mentioned several times by several people. When you're feeling the target on you, it changes how you process this. So when you asked me a second ago about how they feel, if it feels different, well, they're clearly feeling targeted. Yeah. And when you're the person that's under fire, the immediate impact on your life will push you to do things you probably wouldn't otherwise do. And so I think in that particular case, you're talking about people who feel themselves targeted and they feel themselves being shot at. Whether or not it's universally happening, it's happening enough that they're feeling that they have to do something in that regard. If you're talking about why that same thing doesn't apply to the issues that I talk about a lot of times, value of human life, abortion, preborn violence, things like that, is because they're not capable of standing up for themselves and the rest of us are capable of ignoring what's happening. And so that's a different thing. You're not targeted. You're less likely to be the one that speaks out. And you hear that in every social justice movement throughout history. The people who are at the forefront of it fighting it say, it's easy for you to look away. You're not the one being attacked. Frederick Douglass said it. Martin Luther King Jr. said in his letter from a Birmingham jail. It's easier for you to say wait when it's not you under fire. And in that particular case, what makes abortion tougher than others is because the people who are under fire can't speak for themselves.
Wow.
Yeah. I just wanted to add a little bit to Jay. So we talk about when we first heard it and speaking with our young people about the situation and what went on, I have the great opportunity of being able to minister with all black, but also minister with all white. And with my all black congregation and those students that are there, this event hit them, but it didn't hit them as bad as when they had the police brutality, right? Because I think what this situation does, it adds everyone to the room, right? It adds everyone to the room. Everyone has either been a teen, has a teen as a kid, has a teen, as an adult, or is a teen. And so now no one's safe. But I know that if it's in pockets, it's more powerful. When Sandra Bland, I had to cut my Sunday service short to have a conversation about Sandra Bland, right? Because it affected them sincerely, deeply. The women, the girls in that classroom spoke out. So like he said, abortion, they don't have a voice. When it's that time, people will speak. This right here just affects everyone. And I think that's the difference. When you're talking about children, you're talking about teens, that's when everyone is affected in one place or another. So.
Guys, last two questions. When it comes to the church and this issue, do we have a voice in this issue? And if we do, how are we using that when it comes to the issue of school gun violence? And should we have a voice in this issue?
I think Todd you alluded to this earlier, and I will add, the darker this world gets, and I think all of us wake up every morning and we go, I didn't think it could get darker, but after the shooting, it feels darker.
Yeah.
And we are in the light business. We talk about the truth, the light, the way. So the darker this world gets, the brighter the gospel and the opportunity for the gospel to blow through and to really illuminate what's going on. Yeah. As the body of believers, I think we have every right to address, and we should be part of this conversation. And I think all of us, to a degree, would agree that this goes beyond gun violence. This is a moral heart issue. We are depraved human beings. We are capable of atrocities, and it's a heart issue. And that's not to take away from what's been going on. But a lot of times we try to, we try to, deal with Band-Aids and symptoms, and not the actual cancer of what's eating at, what's happening. So I think we have every right to speak into this. I think youth, especially, we should be in the trenches with our people, shoulder to shoulder. 1 Peter, live such honorable lives that the Gentiles have, everything is pointing back to God. And honorable lives in this case is doing life with these individuals, hurting with them, crying with them, sympathizing, empathizing, and being there.
Anybody else?
We definitely should have a voice. I think it starts with our senior leadership, because even if, as next gen leaders, if we wanted to get on the front lines with students, you still have to go through that process of making sure that your leadership is on board with it. And so we have, in our church, we have a lot of judges and a lot of people that's running for office that constantly come through our church, and we give them a platform to speak. And so if we can start really pushing the needle in terms of saying, let's make some of our agenda be about these young people. Let's make some of our agenda, when you get up here and speak, let's make it about this gun violence. Let's make it about education. Let's really do something where we're making a difference. But I believe it starts really with the church, because we're connected with the community.
Right. I agree. I'll add Tommy. I don't think it has to be a political view. Goes back to what several of us are saying. It doesn't have to be political, but it is a heart issue. It is I love the way you said that, dark to light. It is. We're all about Jesus. It's a reminder to our students, to the next generation, that this stuff should not take them by surprise. It's going to continue to get worse until Jesus gets back. It's a given. So it's a reminder to them. It's an encouragement to them. Hey, listen, we need to be people who speak up, and it's okay to do that.
I think this is a great. Go ahead. I think this is a great opportunity for the church. You think about it just in our own lives, right? When we are in a darkest hour, when something has happened, where do we go? We run to Christ, right? And so this is an opportunity for the world to see us and to be able to come here. Hey, we provide safety. We provide that heart healing, all those things. And I think that we just need to make sure. My pastor has done a great job. He called me and said, hey, I just want to make sure that we're at least giving the young people an opportunity to speak, and we listen on Sunday when they come into church. And I think that that's where it starts. It starts there. It's very simple. Just listening. just listening and letting them know that, even in this darkest time, our God is still sovereign, right? But go ahead.
I think, like, going back to the part of the conversation where you asked, does the church have a voice? I believe we have a very big voice, but it has to be a voice of hope. Like, it is not the time to get your pitchforks and picket signs and walk around saying, turn or burn or anything of that nature. But it needs to be a time where we're casting hope. Like, listen, especially in our young people who are dealing with this, that they have a hope. We do not live or suffer or struggle as those without hope. We have this hope in Jesus, no matter who's in office, no matter who is whatever have you, that we have a hope in Jesus. So it's not putting our faith in people, but putting faith in the God who's over those people. It doesn't matter. All the other things don't matter as long as I say, God, I can trust in you no matter how. Like, one of my favorite verses is, for I am certain of this, that I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And I love the reason why I love that verse so much is that I will see. It's a choice to see the hope. It is the choice to see the goodness. Yeah, there's a lot of dark out, but it's seeing, the moments of light. Yeah.
I think it also gives us a place to process. The church helps process this. It's that idea of, I think it's Andy Stanley that wrote a while back. It's right or wrong is not our cue, but what's the wise thing to do? And I think wisdom speaks into this more than anything, is what is the wise thing to do when you're sitting down with a group of guys who come from different backgrounds, different stories. Is it wise to say this is absolute, or is it wise to sit down and have a conversation? Is it wise to hit somebody? What was the nuclear button on social media? Is it wise to hit that nuclear button? We have to come at it as a church and speak in wisdom, not necessarily in a right or wrong situation. So,
I would also say that for the voice that the church has in this, or the body of Christ has in these situations, one thing you mentioned earlier is that they feel like they're the generation of mass shootings.
Yeah.
Well, that there, as for somebody who deals with a lot of people on hard issues, that's a problem for me already, because that's, as you were talking about, I think we have to speak encouraging into this. And it's a terrible thing to define yourself by the worst thing that ever happened to you, or the worst things that are happening. If you begin to define yourself by those awful things that are happening, in the area that I work, obviously, I'm most interested in the idea that we are the image bearers of God, and to go to them and say that you are not just victims of mass shootings. You're not just victims of a culture gone wrong, although I agree with both of those things being problems in this culture. You need to start to believe and to see yourself as an image bearer of God that can impact this world in powerful ways. If you understand what you are and the people around you are, and begin to carry yourself accordingly. And to stop seeing this as some zero-sum game. I win, you lose, you win, I lose. But to start to look at the other people as fellow image bearers of God, fellow children of God, and to get beyond whatever differences that you see, and to discover realms of tolerance, as you were mentioned earlier, that tolerance begins when we disagree. That's where tolerance starts. Right. You can't tolerate somebody that agrees with you. That's not tolerance, it's agreement. We tolerate the people that we disagree with, and we find ways to reach life-affirming, productive solutions to problems.
Wow.
So don't allow a generation right now as Christian leaders to start to define themselves by the worst things that are happening to them, but to step in and to say you are more than the circumstances you have found yourself in. It's an opportunity now for us to rise above. Every generation faces evil. This is a particular evil for your generation that may be different than others, but is no different than all the rest of us. It's
every generation.
Every generation.
That's what's key to this one. Yeah. Guys, last question. Back to this feels different, and it's starting to look different to a certain degree. What characteristics are you seeing out of this generation that we maybe haven't seen in the past? Because there does seem to be some certain generational characteristics that are a little different. Am I right about that or wrong about that one?
I think, and I love social media. I feel like this generation, with Instagram, Snapchat, with Facebook, this need for the immediate. We don't allow things to stew. We don't carefully think through our words. And I love FaceTime, but even that need, we've forgotten what a handwritten letter feels like. We are so disconnected. And social media gives us this false sense of we're all connected.
Did it surprise you, though, how, unlike Columbine,
Right.
back in the 90s, it took years to get that video out.
Yeah.
Like we just got it, I think, 2 years ago, and it happened in 97. For this one here, it took seconds almost. I mean, it was one of those things, I was surprised they were even videotaping it, and it just went viral just like that almost.
Which is a problem in the sense that, go back to Columbine as an example. What happened at Columbine and the immediate information that everybody thought they had about what the elements were that played into that, all of it was wrong. But everyone's immediately responding to wrong information. And my experience has been, and especially situations like this, where stuff is unfolding so quickly because of the speed of social media, because of the way that things spread virally, almost everything that comes out immediately is in some way mistaken or wrong.
Right.
But it's so emotionally packaged in this terrible, tragic event that you have to respond to something when you don't fully understand what's happened. It takes time to get to the truth.
It does.
And that's one of the things I try to help encourage audiences all the time. Take a moment. Before you go out in the world and start using that megaphone that you've been given, which I do think makes people feel powerful. It makes them feel heard. It makes them feel like they can contribute. Take a moment.
Wow.
Find out what's actually going on before you start the town crier thing, before you start running around saying things. Just let information come to you. Before, because I've told friends, you could fill a large, uncharitable book with the Facebook post that I've deleted before I hit post. Because I realized not the right time, not the right things to say. Get rid of it. So
they're an immediate generation.
Yes.
That'd be one of their characteristics. Anything else?
Lack of true personal relationships with each other.
Yeah.
We grew up, and we had to go out and we had to play together. We had to build together. We had to talk to each other. We really had personal relationships. And so I think with this generation, because of technology, because of social media, when you don't have those personal relationships, you really don't have feelings toward people. And so you have a generation of young people who really don't have to communicate with other people anymore, who really don't know the feelings of other people anymore. And so if you don't have those relationships, it's going to be easy for me to go and harm a group of people because I don't really have a relationship with you, as opposed to me knowing you and knowing your family and knowing who you are and say, well, I won't do that to you because I wouldn't want you to do that to me. And so I think this generation has lost just the personal relationship field. And I think we have contributed to it, as adults, because they kind of model what they see nowadays. And so we have to get back to where it becomes community. We're talking about it, we're stressing it, but are we really executing it?
Yeah, I like to piggyback on that. As you tell students to go and walk up to people and notice people and talk to the people who are at this other side of the room, they'll say, "Oh, that's awkward." Well, that's okay. Lean into the awkward. Step into the uncomfortable. Go and have a conversation. They're like, "How do you do that?" I just think maybe this generation of leaders, parents, of teachers need to stress, hey, notice those people you don't necessarily talk to and you don't spend time with. A Fortnite conversation over PlayStation is not a conversation. Having a conversation with someone face to face is
Chase would disagree.
Like, wait a minute here.
Where are we dropping? But with those two things, we said that they don't trust us anymore. Maybe that's why they don't trust us, because we don't know how to have personal relationships with anyone. And so if I don't know you, why would I trust you? And so I don't know, maybe that's part of it. So.
Relationships are dirty. I mean, you're down in the trenches with people, and relationships have consequences. Whereas social media, there's no consequence. The other piece to that is they never turn that off. So all of this information, right or wrong, is coming at them so fast. One of our students was talking about it the other day when I pulled him aside. He was organizing some of the things happening at his school. He said, man, we are inundated with all of this information and all of this virility of this issue and other issues and social issues and racial issues. It's no wonder that they're looking at us and saying, what are you doing? And wanting to use their voice to be heard. So it's messy.
I just want, going back to the question you asked, something that's different about this generation. I love that they're no longer hiding behind a screen as well. When it comes to some of these big topics, it's the walkouts, they're taking not only their opinions or their perspectives or things that they've put on social media, but they're also saying, okay, let's do something. And we can no longer hide behind the screen. We can no longer hide behind our opinions there. If we really want our voice to be heard, it's got to be something with action.
And we said it, I know closing up, but you talked about, somebody said it in here, what's next? So yeah, we're going to walk out, but what's next? Where do we go from the walkout? How do we let this generation know that we're serious about what we believe in? What's our next? Okay, we want to start a movement. Social media has got us all riled up. How do we execute? And execution is going to be the key for this generation.
I actually worry too about how they're going to deal with disappointment.
Right.
Because they're about to be disappointed. I mean, because, as I said, this is an immense issue that's going to take a long time if you want to get traction on it. And there's a sense that they want to go out and see the world change immediately. And I have very real concerns about how because I'm a free speech guy, man. I think everybody should be free to advocate for whatever they want, no matter how crazy it is.
Yeah.
And the more you hear crazy, the easier it is to find them. So, but to that end, if somebody wants to go out and advocate for somebody, I support them. Go out and advocate for your position, but understand there's going to be pushback. Just because you were shot at, just because you're young, does not mean that they're not going to argue with you and they're not going to stand up and fight for their position. And I think there was a sense, you talk about these feelings, I seem to hear from them this sense that this moment should carry them to some place that I'm not sure they're realizing how hard the opposition is going to come. And a great deal of that opposition will not be charitable. They're not going to be met with some people will be respectful. Some people will dialogue with them. Some people are just going to come with hate right out of the gates. And so I have very real concerns as a Christian and as a man who's looking after children and young people and deals with them a lot, how to help them get ready for the difference between the passion that is driving you out right now and the resolve and grit that you need to determine yourself to get into if you want to get something done over a long term, because it takes a long time to do important things.
And with process comes disappointment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That is so true. Hey guys, thank you for your time. I really do think you guys are at the front and center, the front row. Thank you for letting us come into your world here and delve right in. And thank you for your time, and just thank you for what you do for the next generation. All of you. We appreciate that. We normally go to pastors, and we said, nah, let's go to the real people. So, if we're all pastors listening to this, ignore that last comment. But thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks.